While I was working abroad, my parents decided to let my sister and her family stay in my apartment for a little while. When I returned, I found all my belongings packed up in boxes and dumped in the garage. When I confronted them, they said I was being ungrateful, so I made a single call to my landlord. And by the next morning, my sister's access cards were completely deactivated. I'm Monica, 27, and I teach English. For the past 9 months, I'd been living in Barcelona, Spain, embracing a dream opportunity at an international language institute. Before leaving last September, I'd handed my parents a spare key to my Chicago apartment with straightforward instructions. Water my plants twice a week and grab my mail. That's it. Simple enough, right? My parents and I had always been close. We FaceTimed regularly, maybe twice a month, and I trusted them completely to handle anything that might pop up back home. I even texted my mom from O'Hare the day I departed, joking around, "Don't let my place burn down while I'm gone." She laughed it off, promising everything would be perfectly fine. Fast forward to last Tuesday evening. My school suddenly announced they were shutting down early for major renovations. All teachers needed to wrap up classes immediately. My contract was supposed to run through summer, but they changed everything on a whim. I scrambled to book the first available flight home, spending those long hours in the air thinking about what I'd return to. I kept telling myself the apartment would be exactly as I'd left it, untouched and waiting. But I couldn't shake this gnawing, uneasy feeling in my gut. Finally, around 11 at night, I landed at O'Hare and grabbed a taxi straight to my building in Lincoln Park. After that grueling 11-hour journey, I was absolutely exhausted but relieved to be almost home. When I arrived and climbed the stairs to my third-floor apartment, I fumbled for my keys in the dim hallway. The lock felt stiff, resistant. I figured maybe it was just old and needed some WD-40, but later I'd realize it had been completely replaced recently. I pushed the door open and immediately froze in place. The air hit me first. This weird combination of baby powder mixed with something else that absolutely shouldn't have been there. The living room was completely transformed into something unrecognizable. I stepped inside slowly, barely believing my own eyes. Bright plastic toys were scattered everywhere across the floor. A massive stroller was parked right in the hallway. Children's drawings were taped haphazardly to my walls with Scotch tape. It looked like someone had converted my apartment into a daycare center. The furniture was all wrong too. My plain brown leather couch that I'd saved up for 6 months to buy, gone. In its place sat this huge, gaudy sectional covered with cartoon character pillows. My beautiful glass coffee table had vanished completely. Instead, there was this cheap wooden table with crayon scribbles all over the surface sitting in the corner. Even the curtains were different. My elegant sheer curtains replaced with bright ones printed with jungle animals. I noticed a half-empty baby bottle with old curdled milk sitting on my kitchen counter. My front door had a shiny new deadbolt that I definitely didn't recognize. I felt my heart grow heavy and still, like someone had physically reached into my chest and squeezed. My breath caught in my throat. Then I heard it, a soft, innocent giggle from somewhere deeper in the apartment. Stephanie, my older sister, 32 years old, emerged from the den with this big grin plastered across her face. She was holding my 5-year-old nephew, Mason. Her husband, Derek, 34, had my 2-year-old niece sound asleep on his shoulder. They both looked at me with these expectant faces and said cheerfully, "Surprise, sis, we've missed you so much." My brain completely went blank. Stephanie immediately launched into this explanation, speaking quickly as if she genuinely expected me to be totally fine with this situation. She said with that same smile, "Mom told us you decided to extend your lease for another whole year and wouldn't be coming back until next summer. So we figured it would be okay to stay here while you were away. We didn't want the place sitting empty, you know." My mouth literally fell open. For what felt like forever, I couldn't form words. I just stood there in my own doorway, staring at them, feeling my blood run ice cold. If their story was actually true, it meant they'd moved my entire life out and transformed my apartment into theirs. all without me knowing anything about it for months. I suddenly did the math in my head, my thoughts racing. If I was supposedly coming back next summer and they'd treated my return as some distant future event, then they must have moved in around last November. That was roughly 5 months ago. I was completely stunned, rooted to the spot. Stephanie kept chattering away like I was just going to laugh this whole thing off as some harmless misunderstanding. She explained they needed extra space for the growing kids and that our parents thought keeping the apartment warm and lived in instead of empty was actually doing me a favor. I barely registered what she was saying. All I could think was, they took over my home, my sanctuary, my space. Stephanie held out this crumpled piece of paper toward me. It was apparently the new lease agreement they'd had my parents sign, pretending it was me extending the contract. I remember just standing there with my hands hanging at my sides, blinking slowly like I was in some kind of nightmare. When I finally found my voice, it came out sharp and cold. "What the hell is this, Stephanie?" She looked genuinely confused, almost offended, and replied, "What do you mean?" As if somehow I was the one in the wrong here. A dozen different feelings rushed through me all at once: shock, anger, complete disbelief. My mind was absolutely racing. They'd changed the locks on my apartment. They'd removed all my belongings. They were calling me some extended tenant in my own home. I felt physically sick to my stomach. Suddenly I was shaking. I muttered something barely coherent about needing to call Mom right now and rushed to what used to be my couch, though I realized my actual couch was gone, replaced by this monstrosity. I sat down hard and pulled out my phone with trembling fingers. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. I dialed Mom's number, my hand shaking so badly I almost dropped the phone. When she answered, her voice was thick with sleep and confusion. I didn't give her a chance to fully wake up before I tore into her. "Did you know Stephanie moved into my apartment? What the hell is going on here? Someone better start explaining right now." My mom squeaked in surprise, clearly caught off guard. She stammered that Stephanie really desperately needed a place, that there had been some kind of emergency situation at her old apartment. She told me in this rushed, defensive voice that Stephanie's previous place had developed a dangerous black mold problem and the kids were getting seriously sick from it. She insisted they'd had to leave immediately for health reasons. She kept repeating that they genuinely thought I'd be completely fine with them being there, that it was supposed to be a favor to everyone involved. I tried to interrupt her rambling explanation, but she just kept going. Then my dad grabbed the phone from her. Before I could say a single word, he started raising his voice at me. "What would you do if Stephanie was in this exact situation, Monica?" He practically yelled through the phone. He was genuinely angry at me for making any kind of fuss about this. He said firmly, "Think of the kids, Monica. Think about little Mason and Claire," as if mentioning my niece and nephew was supposed to end the argument right there. My mother added in this tearful, wounded voice, "We did this to help you too, sweetheart. Keeping your place occupied meant squatters couldn't move in. We thought you'd actually be happy that your plants got watered and everything." She sounded so defensive, like this whole scheme was supposed to be some kind of selfless act of love and protection. Inside, I was absolutely furious. How dare they lie to me like this? How dare they make decisions about my life, my home, without even consulting me once? I finally yelled back that this was my home and my lease, that I'd never given permission for any of this insanity. I told them they had absolutely no right to decide my life without talking to me first. Not once, not ever. Stephanie, who'd been awkwardly hovering behind Derek in the background, suddenly started crying. She said between sobs that she was sorry, that she honestly thought this arrangement was okay because Mom and Dad had assured her it was fine. I snapped back, my voice rising. "No, Stephanie, this is not okay. None of this is okay. I want everyone out now." In a more controlled voice, trying to keep my composure, I told Stephanie and Derek they needed to pack up their things and leave. Derek said softly, looking genuinely apologetic, "Monica, we're really sorry about this misunderstanding. We can go. We'll figure something out." Stephanie gathered up the kids and, as quietly as possible given the circumstances, they started collecting their belongings. I directed them to pack quickly and be gone by morning. It was absolutely surreal, like watching some bizarre reality show. Seeing my own sister pack up my dishes into cardboard boxes with tears streaming down her face. My parents actually drove over in the middle of the night to help shove boxes and furniture pieces onto the curb outside. Stephanie promised she'd keep in touch, but her voice didn't sound convincing at all. Finally, in those early morning hours, as the sun was just starting to peek over the Chicago skyline, they all left. The moment the door closed behind them, I locked it securely and just collapsed onto that awful sectional couch. I felt like someone had kicked me hard in the stomach. The apartment fell silent except for the echoes of what had just happened, playing over and over in my mind. I sat perfectly still for a long moment, my mind completely blank. Then slowly I started inspecting everything with fresh, analytical eyes. The coffee table had dried crumbs stuck all over it. The refrigerator was wide open, humming loudly. A broken plastic toy was wedged under the sofa. This was my space, my home, and I had to see it clearly now. The next morning, after several cups of strong coffee and many deep, calming breaths, I started methodically documenting absolutely everything I could find. I took out my phone and began photographing every single mark and broken item I discovered. There were holes punched in the bedroom wall where they'd apparently installed some kind of baby gate. The curtains in the main bedroom were torn and hanging at odd angles. A half-used diaper was sitting on the bathroom floor, making me gag. I paced from room to room, discovering more and more damage. Stains covered the carpet in multiple spots. There was a significant dent in the front door frame where a safety gate had been forcefully pried off. I found crushed cereal ground into my kitchen rug and a deep scratch gouged into the beautiful hardwood floor I'd been so careful to maintain. I even found a tiny plastic doll shoe wedged behind the couch cushion. I swear I must have taken at least 100 detailed photographs. Then, while sorting through the trash pile they'd left outside by the dumpster, I stumbled on something that made my blood boil. It was an eviction notice from Stephanie's previous landlord, dated a couple weeks before they'd moved into my place. It clearly stated she'd been evicted for consistent non-payment of rent over several months. My jaw literally dropped open. Suddenly, everything became crystal clear. The dramatic mold emergency story was complete, total nonsense. A fabricated lie. Stephanie had been kicked out for not paying rent, and my parents had simply decided to slip her family into my apartment while I was conveniently overseas and unable to stop them. All that talk about needing extra space and keeping the apartment occupied was just elaborate lies, stacked on top of more lies. I sat down heavily on the sectional, feeling this overwhelming mixture of anger and deep betrayal rising up inside me like a wave. They deliberately lied to me to bail out Stephanie from her own financial mess and lease violation. I almost felt physically sick thinking about it. How could they use me like this? Stephanie and I used to be genuinely close growing up, practically best friends. My parents had always seemed supportive of both of us. Now I realized they'd been conspiring behind my back for months, probably planning this whole scheme before I'd even left for Spain. I locked that eviction notice carefully in my jacket pocket and headed straight to my parents' house in the suburbs. My parents' garage is usually pretty organized and tidy, but not this time. It looked completely chaotic, like a tornado had torn through it. My boxes and furniture pieces were stacked carelessly in total disarray under plastic sheeting that clearly hadn't done its job. I pried up a top corner and discovered everything underneath was absolutely soaked through. They must have tried to cover my belongings during a recent rainstorm, but it obviously hadn't worked properly. My dining table's beautiful wood surface was badly warped and buckling from prolonged water exposure. The cushions from my leather sofa were covered in mildew and smelled horrible. Even my laptop bag felt damp inside when I picked it up. I spent hours carefully sifting through box after box, pulling out just about every sentimental item I owned. Most of it was completely ruined. Photo albums covered in mold, boxes of old birthday cards and letters soaked through and disintegrating. Gifts my grandmother had given me over the years falling apart in their original packaging. Then I checked one last batch of boxes where I usually kept my most valuable possessions. My heart absolutely dropped. They were nearly empty. I pulled out a ripped cardboard box that should have contained my custom-built gaming computer. The PC itself was completely gone. The case, all the expensive components, everything had vanished. All that remained was some tangled cables. My watch collection box was there on a shelf, but completely empty inside. The small velvet jewelry box that held pieces I'd inherited from my grandmother was present, but all the actual items were gone. I frantically rifled through every single shelf in that garage, growing more panicked. The jewelry stand was still there, but every bracelet and ring had vanished into thin air. I called my mom immediately, my voice shaking with barely contained rage. "Mom, what happened to the silver necklace Grandma gave me before she passed? Where is it?" She just sighed deeply and wouldn't directly answer the question. I forced myself to finish taking complete inventory of everything, writing it all down. Nearly $8,000 worth of my belongings were either missing or destroyed beyond repair. My gaming PC, my laptop, designer watches, inherited jewelry, my expensive gaming chair, everything valuable was gone. Plus, I estimated the cost of properly fixing and cleaning the apartment would run around $1,500 minimum. So I was looking at being out nearly $10,000 total. My savings account felt empty just thinking about that number. I called my landlord, Mr. Harrison, as soon as I got back to the apartment. He answered right away, thank God. I calmly explained the entire situation to him, trying to keep my emotions in check. He was absolutely horrified and told me firmly to keep everything carefully documented. He said I should absolutely consider taking this to small claims court. That this was clear trespassing and theft, plain and simple. Despite the shock still running through my system, I tried to stay level-headed and methodical. Stephanie hadn't responded to any of my calls or text messages. I noticed she'd even blocked me on social media. My parents, on the other hand, wouldn't stop calling. They kept pushing me hard to apologize to Stephanie, to forgive and forget like this was just some minor family squabble. My dad actually had the nerve to tell me, "You're making a mountain out of a molehill here, Monica. Think of the kids and what this is doing to them." As if mentioning Mason and Claire was supposed to magically solve everything and make me forget about my stolen property. My mom cried during one phone call and insisted through her tears that they'd only done this to help everyone involved. It felt like they genuinely thought I'd just get over it eventually if they kept pushing. To make everything worse, our extended family started chiming in through the family group chat. My aunts and uncles were essentially picking sides. About half of them thought I was some kind of monster for evicting a sister with small children, completely ignoring why I'd had to do it. The other half were absolutely mortified at what my parents had orchestrated. I had relatives I barely even knew sending me text messages saying I should be deeply ashamed of myself. Stephanie posted this vague status on social media about how her heart had been broken by family betrayal. And people who didn't know the full story were naturally assuming I'd done something terrible to her. I kept myself calm and methodical through all of this chaos. I created a detailed folder on my laptop containing the eviction notice scan, hundreds of photos of damage, and a complete timeline of events as they'd unfolded. I started lining up all my paperwork and potential witnesses. The kind building superintendent in my apartment complex even offered to sign an official statement confirming that I'd never given any authorization for these living arrangements. Mr. Harrison told me to be absolutely thorough with my documentation. He said even small things like the replaced couch and my dead plants would help reinforce my case in court. I have to admit I felt genuinely conflicted and guilty on some particularly hard days. I hated that I'd had to essentially throw my family out on such short notice. I hated that I hadn't received a real, sincere apology from anyone aside from Stephanie's tearful, "I'm sorry." But deep in my gut, I knew I'd done the right thing. No one gets to treat me or my home like this, family or not. 3 months later, everything finally came to a head in civil court. After extensive negotiations and mediation sessions, we reached a settlement agreement. My parents agreed to pay me back $15,000 over 3 years, covering all repairs, stolen property, and my legal fees. We signed an incredibly detailed agreement that left no room for interpretation. The payments would come directly out of Dad's paycheck automatically through a court-ordered garnishment. If they missed even a single payment, I could immediately reopen the entire case. I insisted on adding interest to make it truly fair. The negotiations were tough and emotionally draining. We actually met at the lawyer's office downtown, and everyone had to sign their names in front of a notary public. Honestly, seeing my signature on that thick stack of legal papers felt completely surreal. My father has actually stuck to the payment plan religiously. He checked himself into a professional gambling recovery program. Something I discovered was at the root of all this, paid for entirely by my grandmother. He started attending therapy sessions twice a week and goes to Gamblers Anonymous meetings regularly. He even has a sponsor now who checks in on him. His spending habits have completely transformed. He shows me his bank statements every month now, proving all gambling apps have been deleted from his phone. He even opened a separate savings account specifically for making these restitution payments to me. Last week, he handed me his last 6 pay stubs, and I could clearly see each installment going straight into my account. It's like overnight, Dad became this responsible, diligent person I barely recognized. Grandma Rose gives him constant moral support. She actually attended a GA meeting with him once, sitting in the back and taking notes in her little purse notebook. Bless her heart. It's been almost 12 weeks since he last gambled, and this is genuinely the longest stretch I've seen him go without placing a bet since this addiction started years ago. To make that crucial first payment, my parents had to liquidate several major assets. They sold Dad's beloved sailboat and their recreational RV. They're also downsizing from their suburban house, moving into a much smaller townhouse next month to cut their monthly costs dramatically. Mom somewhat reluctantly took a part-time position at a local bookstore, her first paid job in nearly 15 years, to help cover their portion of the settlement. They maintain a strict budget now, complete with color-coded spreadsheets tracking every expense. They even started attending marriage counseling because apparently Dad had been blaming Mom for encouraging this whole apartment swap scheme. It's pretty ironic hearing about that. Dad apparently cried during one therapy session, telling the counselor, "I was genuinely trying to help my daughter financially, not completely ruin her life." Well, too late for that realization. Stephanie and I have been very slowly rebuilding our relationship, taking deliberate baby steps. Her kids are honestly a big part of why I did what I did. I wanted to protect them from this toxic dysfunction too. We now see each other at least once weekly. Every week, Stephanie, Mason, Claire, and I meet up for some kind of outing. Playground, zoo, children's museum, whatever sounds fun, so we can have normal sister time with the kids around, away from all this drama. We even had what we jokingly called a sibling summit, where we cooked dinner together at her new place and talked honestly while the kids played in the other room. She's doing so much better now in every way. She signed a lease on a really nice apartment in a good school district, and she's been keeping up with rent perfectly. She even insisted on paying me $200 back for my couch that she'd sold, which I told her was completely unnecessary, but she insisted it was an important gesture of taking responsibility. The kids think Grandma and Grandpa simply made a big mistake and are learning how to properly say sorry. Stephanie's still somewhat nervous about trusting our parents again, but she's definitely stronger and more independent now. It actually feels really good hearing her genuinely say, with tears in her eyes, "I'm so sorry, sis. You deserved so much better than what we put you through. I learned some incredibly hard lessons through all this. No more spare keys handed out, and definitely no more blind trust without proper legal paperwork backing everything up. I changed all my locks myself. Twice, actually, just to be absolutely safe. I set a new firm habit. I only open my door for people I know for certain and have specifically invited. My parents don't have any access whatsoever to my apartment now. Any family gatherings happen in public spaces or at Grandma Rose's house, never at my place. That's my sanctuary now. I quietly left the chaotic extended family group chat. Way too much drama and people taking sides without knowing facts. I made one new private group chat with just Stephanie and a few of our oldest, most trusted friends for updates and genuine support. I even got a completely new phone number that only my closest friends and my work contacts have. Therapy has been an absolute lifesaver for me personally. I had several really tough nights early on where I couldn't sleep. I still sometimes wake up thinking about Grandma's ring or some other cherished item that's gone forever. I cry behind closed doors when I remember how peaceful and safe I used to feel coming home to my apartment before all this happened. But I'm healing, slowly but surely. I've learned to set firm boundaries and advocate strongly for myself. I told my therapist recently I keep replaying those horrible moments, but I also keep reminding myself it was 9 months overseas versus literally everything I owned at home. She said something that really stuck with me. It's completely okay and healthy to feel angry and betrayed. Those feelings are valid. Looking back now, I truly believe I did the right thing. I lost my illusions about who my parents really were, and I had to draw a firm line in the sand to get my life back. But I have my home, I have my dignity, I have my self-respect, and that's worth everything.